I remember Paramahansa Yogananda or someone, he was saying that one of the problems with yoga is that the old yoga, I mean classical yoga, is that the yogis realized they were having these amazing realizations about God consciousness. But then they realized that people in the village were crazy and they weren't listening. So the men, it was women who had babies and stuff, the men started withdrawing into monasteries. They started going into caves, they started leaving
Mhm.
the village. And then what happened is the more distant they became from the village, the more their theories didn't even apply to people anymore. You could read some yogic text and it might say, well, you should do this and this and this. And you're sitting there with 4 kids and a job
Yeah.
and you're like, what are you talking about? And this teacher said, we have to stay in the village because that's what keeps it real. That's what keeps it alive. Otherwise, it just becomes this dead, useless teaching.
Hi. Maybe you are at the beginning of your inner spiritual journey, or maybe you've been here for a long, long time. However the case is, warm welcome to my pod Shift Your Energy by Meditation Jam with Maria Rinné. And this is a part of my podcast that is created to be your guide, your inspiration and your companion, moving through a time that is highly transformational, where we are shifting our drive from our mind to our heart and soul. And I am your host, Maria. I am here to share my stories, tools and lessons from my own inner journey that I've been on now for a bit over 2 decades, as well as exploring the many ways we can all reconnect to the energy within. And we will dive deep into what it means to grow, to heal, to show up, and to expand your awareness with the aim to bring you insights that sparks that beautiful shift. Please take what resonates with you. This is not a religion nor a science. It is a way of life that is connected to your heart and the magic of life. And I am here as an example, and I'm really happy to share how it started, the journey through, and where I am right now. So I hope you will be inspired, maybe entertained, as well as we will in some episodes explore some powerful tools and techniques to shift your energy and to realign you with yourself, your life force, and your beautiful pure purpose. Sometimes it will be just you and me, and other times I'll be inviting guests, visionaries, light workers, and kindred spirits to share their wisdom and inspire us all. So whether you're beginning your spiritual journey or seeking new perspectives along the way, or just want to recognize yourself in these stories to witness your journey, I hope that Shift Your Energy will be a space to learn, to laugh and connect on a deeper level. So let's walk this path together and discover what happens when we turn inward, when we switch on that light, expand our power, connect, walk our talk, and start to step into that more joyful new way of life that is here for us all. So are you ready? I know that I am. Warm welcome, let's begin. Warm welcome to today's episode of Shift Your Energy. And today I am so happy to share a beautiful talk I had with amazing Katarina Bos. And Katarina is from Canada and she is a Kundalini yoga teacher trainer. She is a writer. She's been a farmer, a mom, a business owner, and a yogi mystic. And Katarina is very passionate about Tantra and the divine feminine and the divine masculine to understand and redefine the union of the male and the female energies. And that is one of the subjects we are going to be talking about today, which is also a book that Katarina has written, The Divine Union of the Masculine and the Feminine. And we will also talk a little bit about Tantra, and in the extended version at Substack, we are going deeper into what was it that happened 5,000 years ago that shifted the balance between the male and the female. So I hope you will join me and listening to this. And again, thank you so much, Katarina, for joining. And if you want to hear the extended, then please go to my Substack page. Now, let's say welcome, Katarina. So, warm welcome, Katarina. I'm so happy that you are here. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and for me, it's 9 o'clock in the evening, but you are in Canada, so you are a bit earlier, right?
Yeah, it's just 3 p.m., so
Y- Yeah.
no problem.
And are you on the West Coast or East Coast or in between?
So I'm about 3 hours from Toronto, so
Ah,
kind of mid Canada, I guess.
and I follow you on Substack, and I saw that you've written this book about male and female union, and we are going to talk about that a little bit later. But first, I just love to hear my guest's story of their journey to what you're doing today and to inspire anyone who's listening, and maybe the ups, the downs, anything you like to share.
Such a big question.
Yeah.
But it's funny, so I was raised in Toronto. I actually went to university for mathematics, and I was a computer programmer, and then I married a farmer, and I moved to the middle of nowhere, and I became a farmer's wife, and I had children, I did kind of all the right things. And then when I was 29, I was sick and I had breast lumps, and all the women in my family had already died from breast cancer or something like that, and my mom included. And that's when my spiritual teacher appeared. He actually was someone who was helping us take our farm organic, but he also was a healer. And he was the person who really changed the way I saw the world. Like, I would sit with him, and you just knew that he saw the world through an entirely different lens. And something in me woke up, something in me realized that this is actually the real world. This is because the truth was part of my illness was deep depression.
Mm.
And, and not I was always raised that you put a smile on your face and you're positive and you're easy to get along with and just do the best thing for everybody and you'll be fine. And I was doing that. And I had two small children. My kids were 2 and 4 then. But deep down, I was dying inside, but to the rest of the world, you'd never know.
Mm.
And in the end, so I had this journey with him. And that's actually a topic of my first book that I ever put out, called "What If You Could Skip the Cancer?" And the lumps actually came right out the side of my breast, and I had this miraculous healing, and everything changed after that.
Wow.
And yeah, it was just and I mean, but it's one of those challenges in life, right? That you can have all these amazing awarenesses, but you're still in a marriage with someone who is maybe wonderful, but certainly not necessarily in the same place you are, nor should they be.
Mm.
Maybe you're raising kids, maybe you have struggles, maybe you have work, you have all these things, and yet you've had this huge revelation. Like you still have to live in the world. And so I did. You kind of fall back into life slightly different, but still back into life and the challenges. And then it was probably 10 years later that I discovered Tantra. And it was again sort of this moment in my marriage. I was lying in bed with my husband and I thought, there's more than this. Even though, according to the world, we have a pretty wonderful marriage and our sex life was fine. You know what I mean? Like it was fine
Yeah.
for humans or for whatever it is we think is human. And then the word Tantra came to me. And I went to the local library because this is before the internet, and I just asked the poor old ladies there to find every book they could possibly find on tantra. And and so they brought me all these books. Some of it was really kinky and crazy and wild, but it was like there was something inside of me that knew what I was looking for.
Mm.
I would open the book and I go, "No, not that. Not that." And And it was and eventually I did find it. It was this heart-centered, loving journey of actually connecting with another person. And for me, Tantra, the entry was in intimacy. Like I knew that the intimacy between me and this man, and it could be all genders, it doesn't have to be male, female, but the the intimacy, that we were just scratching the surface. That there was so much more possible. But my husband wasn't interested. He thought we had a great sex life. So that sort of forced me into the spiritual realm and really understanding Tantra from a spiritual perspective, kind of like how do we shift our entire philosophy and mindset to live differently? And this is where understanding the masculine and feminine came in. Because the masculine and feminine, if we imagine God, consciousness, oneness, that this is like a unity. And in Tantra, this is like Shiva Shakti, the oneness. So this is like one dimension of how we could be. We don't live in oneness right now. You and I are talking, we're in duality. This is a duality experience we're having. But if we close our eyes and we breathe deeply, we can touch oneness. We can touch that other way that we can be. So now you have Shiva Shakti, and when they split and become duality, you have the masculine Shiva and the feminine Shakti. And this isn't necessarily gender. This is just like you and I having a conversation. Shiva, right now, I am embodying Shiva because I'm speaking, I'm giving, I'm putting something out, and you are Shakti and you're receiving it. And the quality of our connection is based on how polarized are we into those, right? Like if we have two Shiva energies talking, I'm talking and then you're talking and we're kind of talking over each other, but nobody's listening. And if we're both Shakti, we're both like, like nothing's happening. And so it sparked something in me, like a truth that was something we were missing. That all of duality, all of our experience is this masculine, feminine experience. And it could be the sunshine coming down on our face and us receiving it. And suddenly now we have a merging with the sun. It could be an intimacy where one person polarizes into the masculine. And like in heterosexual relationships, it's the Vajra and Yoni, when it's not just sort of this kind of sex, and it's actually this union, something changes. And this rang so true for me. And what was interesting is after about 20 years, we divorced. My husband and I, we separated. We had to go on separate ways. It was all lovely and amicable. I was very, very lucky. Then I started dating, as a 40 something. This was over 10 years ago. And I'm suddenly dating and I'm with all these men and I kept thinking to myself, what's wrong with these men? Like, why are they all so broken? And then I was speaking to a psychic, and she looked and I said that, and she said, "Who's broken, Katrina?" And I realized that the feminine has been so oppressed over the last 5,000 years, and I could talk for hours about that, that we don't understand the feminine anymore. We've been so twisted and pressed down. If we actually wanted the masculine to respond to us, we don't even know. And so
Mm.
I went celibate for a time so I could finally actually figure out my own inner masculine feminine dynamic. Like I had to heal my masculine because that's a huge part of the feminine. Because it's not about just being in the feminine. We have to find our inner balance. And the reality is this patriarchy that we live within, we have it internalized in our own inner masculine. So anytime our feminine says, "Oh, this would be fun. Our masculine says, that's stupid. Why would you want to do that? Or we feel something, maybe and our masculine says, you shouldn't feel that. And it's this battle inside that we actually need to heal before we can even have, the experiences outside. So this has become a huge passion of mine, this redefining the masculine and feminine so that we actually can connect without just always having this battle
Mm.
and how the masculine and feminine actually dance and support each other and help each other grow within us, with partnerships, with, everywhere. And so that's my,
But that's so interesting because I love to work with lifting the female and the male energy. And there is a lot about, of course, the female has to rise, but the male has to rise as well. And I'm looking at from another point, so I'm not in like what you've said. So interesting to hear it from this side. So I work with energies, and I've been to places where I lift the female and places where I lift the male energy. And for me, it's like when I hear people, and now I say not a lot, but some, they are very aggressive, negative towards male. But we need to embrace the male energy, not the wrong one, not the warped male energy. But as well as we have warped male energy, we have the wrong female energy as well, of course. So we need to find the pure ones and for them to come. So I just love to hear this and to hear it from another angle.
Mhm. Well, and for me, the masculine and feminine, like to me, they have to exist together.
Yeah.
Like that's oneness, right? Without the other, we are only half. It doesn't matter. One way that I see it is that they're either connected or they're disconnected.
Mm,
And when they're disconnected, they're all wrong.
mm,
Everything's wrong. So the question is, why are we disconnected?
mm,
That's really the question. And because both go crazy. Like, so for example, inside of us, my feminine, one duality could be my wildness and the masculine, that's the feminine, and the masculine is structure. Now, wildness isn't crazy. Right? Wildness isn't, if you think of a horse, if a horse is out in nature, it's just eating things and drinking water and maybe having sex and having a nap. It's not like running up trees and stuff and being like, it's not being crazy. But put the horse in a stall, suddenly it looks very different. And so sometimes we have the idea that if for me to be wild, for me to embrace my feminine, I've got to be crazy. But it's like, no, we need to have a masculine inside of us that supports us,
mm.
that actually says, so they have to talk to each other. So if inside I think, that's it, I'm heading to Sweden tomorrow, my masculine side says, yeah, but you're teaching yoga. You have students that you need to, and I think, "Oh, right. I don't wanna disappoint my students. Okay, we'll plan that for later." And then my masculine books me a trip and blah, blah, blah. But they dance together, like, one doesn't get rid of the other,
Mm.
but you can't have just the one, or else the truth is I could decide, "That's it, and then I'm gonna go here, and then I'm gonna go here," but there's nothing that makes sense. And eventually, that's just as dysfunctional as someone living like they're in the pure masculine, like they're a robot, you
Yeah,
know? They don't work.
yeah. So how long have you been working with this?
Probably the last 15 years.
Yeah. And have you seen, because for me, I feel the shift. And I mean, there is a major shift in the energy. And how do you experience it? Is there more people finding the balance with the male and female? Or is it just that you have to do more work?
I feel like the shifts are just happening. Like, I remember years ago, so I teach yoga teacher trainings, and I've been teaching them since about 2009. And I remember the first few times I taught them, I would teach the same, it was the same curriculum. And then when 2012 happened, it
Yeah.
was the most interesting thing because how I noticed it was the next time I taught the same teacher training, I couldn't use the same exercises. It was like everyone knew it. It's like
Mm.
the consciousness had shifted, and as I tried to teach it, I thought, "They don't need this anymore."
Mm.
And so what I really experienced was this quickening that we're learning so fast. And even with the masculine and feminine, sometimes all we have to do is hear it and say, "Oh," and it's just like that. We don't have to study it for 5 years. We don't have to we just got it. Or maybe we do just have to read a book or we just have to meditate for a week or something. But we change so fast. And I think the greatest challenge to us is that we want to hold on to old ideas,
Yeah.
but we've actually already shifted. That's how I really see it. Because even the masculine and feminine, if I had taught this like openly even 10 years ago, this specific, I mean, my first book in Tantra came out in 2017. And there is a little part of masculine and feminine in there, you
Yeah.
know? And then it took some time to actually see how it manifested in all orientations, all genders, and everybody. And now it's almost inescapable. Like,
Mm.
you can see all issues right off the bat. It's like, oh, and most of the time people can just see it once you can show it. Um, Unless sometimes there's a lot of deep injury. You know, people are afraid to be vulnerable, like the feminine vulnerability. They're quite frightened of that if there's old trauma. And for a lot of people, that traumatic feminine has such a protective masculine. Like we're always in balance, right? So the more traumatized we are, the more protective we are. And the more this heals, then this can calm down and then they can sort of come together again. But even that becomes quite obvious, that if someone's really fighting, it's like there's so much pain in there.
I also feel like I used to be in the corporate business a long time ago, but there I had a lot of use of the masculine energy because it's like a go-get energy. And sometimes it's so funny because I can feel myself getting into that, and that's fine in some circumstances. But then it's like we can't keep going with this. We need to get back to the balance, as you say, and let the other part out as well. And I feel with the energy work, it's good because it's okay that you get into old habits, but you become aware and wait a minute, let's stop here. This is the old ways.
Well, and that's where the masculine can be so helpful, right? If we have a really healthy structure inside of us, if let's say we've had a realization that I do too much. I'm kind of that old corporate mindset, like the more is better. Just, if you can work 40 hours, you should work 80. Like that's
Yeah.
what you should be doing. And then something in you says, "No, I'm going to heal that. I'm going to fix that." The feminine sort of says, "We're burning out." And then the masculine listens and says, "Okay, then we're going to cut back and I'm going to create a new structure that says I only work from here to here. I turn things off on the weekend." Well, then all of a sudden, so if that healthy masculine is there, and then maybe something happens, you hear something on Facebook and you think, and fear rises and you're like, "Oh my, I better check my emails. Your masculine can say it's protective and it's safe and it can say, "You're okay.
Mm.
Remember?" And then logic can come in and say, "Remember we did this and this and this and this." And that's how they dance together. Like we have to find the healthy masculine, the
Yeah.
supportive, the protective masculine, then anything's possible.
Yeah. That's, oh, I love that. And your book, is it recently released or?
Yeah, Divine Union of the
Yeah.
Masculine Feminine, it came out. Here's me trying to think what year it is.
Yeah.
It's 2026. That is so bizarre. It just came out in 2023, so it's very recent.
Yeah. And so what can a reader expect from the book? What's in the book without telling all the stories?
I know. No, it's all about so at first we redefine the masculine and feminine, because we've so many gender stereotypes in our mind,
Mhm.
which says that the masculine is strong and burly and tough and cold and the feminine is loving and easygoing and curvy. We
Mm.
have these ideas which have nothing to do with masculine and feminine. It has
Yeah.
nothing to do with anything. And so first we kind of redefine it. And then we look at how does the masculine feminine show up inside of us? What are the dynamics? So like for example, there's all these lovely duality dynamics. You could be giving and receiving and talking and listening and structure and chaos and intuition and logic and inspiration and manifestation. Like these are the things that go together that you want to always be dancing together. That's what keeps us alive.
Mm.
And so we look within. How do these appear inside of us? And then we look at how do they appear out in the world? How do they appear in family, parents and children, in society, in schools, all there. And then, of course, we look at how does it look in intimacy?
Mm.
How does this shift the sex act? How does it change from sort of this desire for, this friction sex that you just rub up against each other until you explode, as opposed to actually what does it look like when the masculine and feminine dance and how we really can achieve true union and feel that bliss again. But of course, they all go together. Like a couple of years ago, I had live courses. It ran for a couple of years. It was a facilitator training about this. And it was fascinating because it was in 3 parts. It was in within, with others, and then in intimacy. And it was so funny. We would start within, and everyone was like, "Oh, this is crazy." And then everybody wanted to talk about sex. Like, no matter what we'd go inside, and it's like, "Oh, I remember when my partner once did this." And it was so funny. And I kept thinking, "That's strange that we just can't stay inside." And then we go into interacting with others, and now suddenly everyone's talking about their own personal
Oh.
experiences. Now it's all reflecting in there. And then we finally get to sex, and we're not even talking about sex because they're all the same. Like if the pattern inside of me is one way, it is the same everywhere, as within is without. Like it's kind of fascinating because so as you read the book, you start to realize, oh, I see. But if we can see it from all the different angles, it makes more sense.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And do you hold courses in this as well, or I know that you are coaching.
I have. This year I'm not because I've scaled back on my teaching. Like I teach a yoga teacher training. Like I teach Kundalini yoga and I teach that every year. And so that's a long, a 9 month course. And I normally do teach this, but I'm writing another book right now, so
Oh,
I sort of scale and I teach on Insight Timer. I know you teach on Insight
yeah,
Timer too. So
yeah.
I'm there as well, and so that's all the teaching I'm doing. And so that I can actually write my book, otherwise I'll just teach and teach and teach.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's your new book about?
It's called Healing from a Sociopathic World. And ironically, it's so funny. It's a book that I started writing because, like, for a number of reasons, like, so even within Tantra, a lot of people, they might study with me, they might read my books, but then they just look at their relationships and say, I don't know why I can't have this, or I don't know how I can find people who want to have this kind of relationship. And it so much comes down to how hurt everybody is. Everyone's so afraid, or so many people are so afraid to get close. Trust is such a big deal. And so that's been sort of fueling me for a long time, this struggle to trust other people and the struggle to treat people nicely. Like
Mm.
probably 14 years ago, my first online course went out and it was called The Foundations for Tantric Intimacy. And one of the sadhana that you had to do was for 1 week, you had to be 100% kind to your partner. And so in their homework, I would ask, what do you think of that? Do you think this is possible? More than half the people wrote, I think it's stupid.
Oh, really?
I couldn't believe it. People were like, that would be so boring. I'm not gonna let someone walk all over me. And it was this and so it again, it was this interesting thing that, wow, what happened to everybody? And so the book, The Sociopathic World, initially what it began as was understanding that sometimes because of the world we've lived in, we actually treat people in sociopathic ways, meaning we treat them like an object. Like we're not
Mm.
actually treating them in a heart to heart way, but as the victim, we kind of assume they're being heart driven and we take it personally. And then we spend decades trying to figure out why would they do that to me? And so this began the writing of the book. But the weird thing is, it's actually gone into this whole other place where I've realized there are these institutions that we've been raised within, whether the governments, the churches, the medicine, the school systems, and again, it might be different. We're in Sweden, but that have been so oppressive right from the get go. The oppression of women, and it all tracks back to 5,000 years ago. There was this watershed where the patriarchy sort of took over, and the energy changed on the earth all over the world. And it was just the wildest thing. And this is why, like 200 generations later, we don't trust anybody. And it's really frightening to open our hearts to someone. And so that's actually what the book's about is I'm deep in the weeds of it right now.
Yeah.
Actually, what it's all about is sort of understanding all of that so that we can heal, so that we can actually be close to others and be happy.
Yeah, that sounds very, very interesting.
I'm so intrigued, I can
Yeah.
hardly wait.
I was thinking another thing also with this that I feel is so important, and that is that I assume this is all around the world, but I know that there's a lot of studies in Sweden that in the younger ages, due to all the web pornography that is around, that the sex is really becoming really rough with young women, and it's like this warped version of how you should do it. And I feel like with this is so important what you are doing, so that we can get back to the like more pure essence of it.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting, but even I at one point really went deep into the effects of porn, especially on men, and especially on, pornography started being streamed, like, onto your phones in 2006. Before that, you had to buy it. You had to
Yeah.
download it. There was a lot more risk. But for young men who, say, were about 12 years old, like, when I first started teaching Tantra, I started these men who were in their early 20s started messaging me, asking whether Tantra could help with their addiction to porn. Because what was happening is from the second that they started puberty, they would get up in the morning, watch a bit of porn, ejaculate. Then they would go to school, they'd sneak off to the bathroom, watch a bit of porn, they'd come home,
Wow.
they'd do it again at night. And what was happening is they would end up ejaculating 4 or 5 times a day, every day, long before they ever actually had sex. Or long before they'd even been with another person. And what was happening was it's kind of like a man ejaculating, like in Chinese medicine, they're draining their jing. So for a woman, this is our bleeding or our pregnancy, you know? So if you imagine bleeding constantly every single day for 8 years, you've got nothing left in the tank. What would happen is because you would never naturally ejaculate that many times. It just wouldn't happen. Not even masturbating without porn or without like no one would do it. So what would happen is they would stop being able to get an erection. And so a lot of young men are taking Cialis, like they're taking like because they can't get it out. And so what happens is the first chakra. So now they're thinking, what's wrong with me? Is there something wrong with me? And it's really hitting them at that root.
Mm.
And so they start watching more violent porn because there's something wrong with them because they can't get it out. And then that sort of levels out, and then they stop, but they can't get it up because they're ejaculating too often. And so this is where even a lot of anyway, there's a lot we could go
Yeah.
down that rabbit hole. But the problem is everything just gets higher and higher and higher. And I remember when I this is, like, probably too much information, but when I first started dating after I divorced in my 40s, I dated a number of men in their 20s, and early 30s who were in that bracket that they'd been raised on porn almost since they were, and the number of them, they didn't even know how to touch a person. Like, to them, sex was sight, what they could see, and touching themselves. So it was very curious, like, there was no exploration, there was no connection, there was no anything. I do think that when people end up in a loving relationship, when they meet someone that they truly care about, we slow down and we try to figure it out, but in the meantime, I think you're right, I think it's gonna be a challenge for everybody.
Yeah, and also the females, because they kind of start to expect that this is because they are growing up and their first encounter is maybe rougher, and they think this is the way it should be. And so, of course, parents have a really a responsibility to talk about them. And that's not the way, but not all parents want to talk about that with their children. I think in Sweden we are more open. It's like not a big deal, but not all the time, of course. So it's yeah, it's good that this comes out.
Well, and I think one of the challenges is that a lot of parents don't even know they don't have a healthy enough experience themselves to even share. No, so for me, in my generation and our generation, we weren't really told anything, but we didn't have that anyway. But so we kind of just played around and, but we didn't know anything. Like I remember even when I was married 30 years ago, I couldn't even talk to my husband about it. Like I couldn't
Oh.
if things didn't feel right, I didn't feel comfortable talking about it, and we just sort of blindly went along. And so all of a sudden you have children and don't really have anything to share besides here are the mechanics of it. And then fast forward, once I started studying Tantra and I started practicing Tantra, and eventually my husband did come around and that was a thing. Suddenly I had a lot more to share. And my kids were teenagers then. And they had all their friends had moved in. Like we actually had I only have 2 children, but we had 6 teenagers living in the house with us. And I would go away on a retreat, like a tantra retreat, and the kids all called it sex camp.
Yeah.
And so I would be coming back and they'd be like, "What'd you do at sex camp?" And I would tell them everything, but it wasn't the details, it was the philosophy. And like you're saying, the slowing down and the connection and all that. But I didn't have the language for it either before
Mm.
I studied tantra, before I could actually give them an alternative to just having sex. Like, because it's so much more than just body parts, it's a whole philosophy. And I think a lot of parents, at least here in North America, they don't have anything more to share. They don't have it themselves. So to me, if we can help the parents, then
Yeah.
maybe, like, you know.
Yeah, good place to start.
Mm,
Yeah.
mhm.
So this is so interesting, but I don't want to hold you, and we are going to get into an extended version for Substack subscribers. But is there something last thing you want to share here before we leave the podcast?
One thing about teaching Tantra is that everybody already knows this. If there's anything I do know is when I teach, people sit and they just nod their head because it's something like deep down, every one of us already knows it. We just don't have the language and we may not have the framework to be able to explain it. Like I remember when I was first married and I would say to my husband, I just want to make love. I don't want to just have sex. And he was a good man and he'd say, okay, tell me what you want me to do. And I'd say, I don't know, but you should know. We should just what I find is like that just that we all know that it's already inside. We just need to find the language. But to really
Mm.
trust that, it's not some out there thing. Then you have to be a guru and you have to have practiced for 10 years. It's right there. And it's kind of like you said, like with the movement of the energy and the shifts, it's dying to come out. It's
Mm.
just dying. That truth is just like, just let me out and just risk it, like it's right there.
Oh, love that. Good last word for this part. So thank you so much for joining. And I should say also that I would put links to your webpage, anyone who wants to get in and get the book and check out when your next book is coming as well. So thank you so much for this part.
Awesome. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you.
You have been listening to Meditation Jam with Maria Rinné, and I am so grateful that you have joined today with your energy. If you liked it, please remember to subscribe, hit the like button, and leave a review if there was something specific that you enjoyed. And you will find more links in the text below from my guests and also to my social media if you like to follow me there. So thank you again for joining, and I hope you have a beautiful day, week and month. Satnam.